Hello, everybody. I am Dr. Scott Petrie, and I am using a new screencasting software tonight, which will hopefully work just fine. And I'll be able to tell you all about how I measure listening skills in my classroom. Now, I have to be totally upfront because if my mother was still alive, she would be rolling on the floor laughing. I was never a good listener as a young person, and my wife could probably testify that I'm barely a good listener now. You know, the cliche is men don't read directions, men don't ask for help, and men don't listen. You'll be seeing a little video that illustrates this later, but first, I want to go on and talk to you about what's going to happen in this lecture. So, this lecture is going to talk about a little bit about a report that was written 32 years ago by Donald Powers. It was called Considerations for Developing Measures of Speaking and Listening. It was published by the College Board, which we all know in America publishes the Advanced Placement Program. And the College Board thinks that speaking, listening, reading, and writing are all very important measures of students' academic success, especially in their advanced placement programs. Yet, since this report was done in 1984 and it references literature that goes all the way back to the 50s, it's kind of surprising to learn that the College Board has not validated any standardized tests on anything that resembles speaking and listening in their instructional programs. So this video is going to kind of highlight some of the research that listening that has been done on listening. It's going to offer some advice to the teachers that are enrolled in the MOOC, and it will give you some demonstrations about some stuff that I have done in my classroom. So I apologize if my big fat head is cutting off some of the text on your slide. I assure you I will read it to you. So one of the first, I guess one of the most interesting things I found in this research is that Mead in 1978 came up with the most frequent objectives in listening tasks, and they are to recall significant details, to comprehend main ideas, to draw inferences, to make judgments, and this causes make a she notes that you make judgment not only about the speaker, but you make judgments about the information. Is it high quality? Is it poor? Is it biased? Is the speaker good, poor? And these all kind of affect the way we listen to the information that's in a speech. So moving on, and all of this stuff is on the blog. If you go to historyrewriter.com, you will find the exact script that I'm reading to you is published as a Word file, and you can download it and use it for yourself. But research shows that students can listen 2 to 3 grade levels above what they can read. And listening while reading helps people have successful reading events when they read with enjoyment and accuracy. Listening while reading has been shown to help with decoding, which is a fundamental part of reading. The average person talks at a rate of about 125 to 175 words per minute. Yet we can all listen and comprehend to up to 450 words per minute. That's how you participate in multiple conversations. You talk to Bill, and you talk to Susie, and you talk to Debbie, and the whole conversation plays itself over in your mind. So, as Mr. Palmer has said, listening has been identified as one of the top skills that employers seek in both their entry-level employees and as well as those that they promote. Now, even though most of us spend the majority of our day listening, it is the communication activity that receives the least instruction in school. As we can all attest to, that's why we're all here. And one of the other interesting facts I found was that on average, viewers who just watched and listened to the evening news can only recall about 17% of the content. So listening is critical to academic success. A gentleman by the name of Dr. Conway examined an entire freshman class of over 400 students. They were given a listening test at the beginning of their first semester. And after their first year of college, about 50% of the students who scored low on the listening tests were on academic probation, but only 4% of those who scored high on the listening test were on academic probation. While, on the other hand, about almost 70% of those who scored high on the listening test were considered honor students after their first year of college, and only 4% of those scoring low on that test had the same success rates. So, one of the negatives about listening is that students don't have a clear concept of listening as an active process that they have control over. Students find it easier to criticize the speaker as opposed to the speaker's message. And students report greater listening comprehension when they use these metacognitive strategies of asking questions, trying to manage their interest, and using elaboration strategies that make them process what they're listening to. Listening and nonverbal communication training also significantly influences multicultural sensitivity. And don't we need that after the presidential primary we've had here in America? So our friend Eric Palmer talks about understanding being the goal of listening. And he suggests that before we have our students do purposeful listening, their teachers need to tell them what they need to pay attention to. What are you listening for? We also need to teach students what to respond to, how to respond, and when to respond. If you've ever had a student that has a rhetorical question in their speech, and then half the class shouts out, "Yeah!" you've got to explain to them. You don't answer them until the speech is over. You don't interrupt someone's speech and give your opinion until the very end. So an example might be you could tell your class, each speech we're going to listen to today we're going to listen to 5 speeches, and for each speech we're going to only listen for the element of life. After each speaker finishes, you're going to clap, and then you're going to take a minute to evaluate the level of passion that they put into their speech. After that, write down 3 suggestions on how they could improve the life in their speech. For instance, instead of emphasizing, "You stole my red hat," they can try stressing, "You stole my red hat." So a classroom teacher who reads Power's College Board study, and I've put it in the MOOC, you can download it, you can read it. However, I do want to interject that I'm actually starting to listen to my customers because last year I had a lot of dissertation excerpts, a lot of empirical research studies in the class that I taught, and teachers hated it. They hated reading it, they hated the quizzes. So this year, against my better judgment, we did away with the featured readings. We did away with the quizzes that were too hard that people complained about. And we're just relying on the discussion board prompts and the Zaption tours to give us formative assessments on how well you guys are engaging in the course. So one of the things that Powers talks about is that empirically measuring oral communication skills requires many hours of assessment on small, controlled populations. This is the exact opposite of what we experience in public schools. It's just not feasible for us to precisely measure each skill: speaking, listening, writing, reading. It's too cumbersome. The important takeaway from this study is that teachers need to prepare their students to actively listen, to avoid distractions, and to teach listening and speaking combined with core academic content. We can do this by training students to evaluate how well various speaking functions are accomplished by their classmates. A lot of people call this peer review. I call it learning by evaluation. And what I have found that has helped me as a writing instructor also helps me as a speaking instructor, that while some people may question the reliability issues with peer review models, I found the benefits of having students critique each other's work and what we call learning by evaluation far outweighs the negatives. So moving on, I'm going to talk a little bit about barriers to listening, which is from Golan, 1990. And Golan says that listeners listen mainly for details, they become distracted, and they also have a lack of interest in the subject.